we're fighting for the largest cuts that we can because it'll help our economy. And,
but you called for $32 billion in cuts in your original proposal, and now you're at 33.
George, remember where all this started. The Democrats controlled the House last year. They controlled the Senate. They should have done this budget last year. They couldn't come to an agreement. We're cleaning up last year's mess.
But when you came in this year, you proposed, and your leadership proposed a bill that would cut about $32 billion, and now you're beyond that. Why isn't that good enough?
Well, because the House worked its will, and what we came up with was $100 billion worth of spending cuts and specific policy riders that have been a part of every appropriations process, and we sent it over to the Senate. It's been 46 days. The Senate has not acted.
You mentioned those policy riders. Some of them include cutting funding for Planned Parenthood, cutting the enforcement authority of the Environmental Protection Agency. The President said those have no place in a short-term continuing resolution. Your response?
There has never been an appropriation process where there were not limitations on what the administration could do. When it comes to an out-of-control bureaucracy in Washington, we know that that's also getting in the way of creating jobs in America. The EPA is out of control. And the American people do not want taxpayer dollars used to fund elective abortions.
If you hold on to that, the White House, the Democrats have been very clear, there is no deal, the government's going to shut down.
So we're going to continue to have conversations with our colleagues across the aisle, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to come to some agreement.
Should it happen, do you think it's right for members of Congress to be paid during a shutdown?
George, our goal is to cut spending, not shut down the government.
I understand that. I know that's not what you want, but it may happen anyway. And if it does...
George, I've said this 1,000 times since the first of the year. I do not want to shut the government.
Oh,
I think that is irresponsible.
I understand
And the House will act as soon as tomorrow to ensure that the government is open while we work to reduce spending.
And I take you at your word that you don't want a government shutdown. I believe you do not want a government shutdown. If it happens, do you think members of Congress should get paid?
No, they shouldn't be getting paid, just like federal employees shouldn't be getting paid.
Some of your colleagues have said that you've told them that you will only sign on to a deal that will get 218 Republican votes. Is that true?
I've never said that privately, nor have I ever said it publicly.
You know what the Democrats say? They say they could cut a deal with you, but you won't buck the Tea Party.
Listen, there's no daylight between the Tea Party and me.
None?
None.
And bottom line, you think there will be a deal that will get a majority of Republicans supporting it?
I feel good about eventually getting to a deal.
Congressman Paul Ryan put out his budget yesterday, his budget blueprint about $6 trillion in cuts. The President's press secretary said it fails the test of fairness by giving tax cuts to millionaires and putting the burden on senior citizens and students.
Well, listen, we've made it clear that we were not going to punt. We were not going to whistle past the graveyard like Congress has in the past. We've got big issues facing our country, and it's time to face up to them. Paul Ryan did a marvelous job in outlining how we can reform this government.
But do you think
the President, I've been begging the President for months, Mr. President, let's lock arms.
What does he tell you?
Let's go do this together.
What does he tell you?
Well, I'd like to work with you, but we'll see. We'll see. When are we going to face up to the big challenges that our country faces?
But do you
we are not going to kick the can down the road.
Let's say the President does come to the table, takes on your challenge on Medicare, maybe on Social Security. Can you imagine a situation where your conference would vote for revenue increases?
I think my team is ready to deal with these big questions.
Including revenue?
It's time to sit down and I'll put everything on the table. I'm not interested in raising taxes on the American people. But if it takes leaving it on the table to have the conversation, I'll have the conversation.
You've worked a lot more with the President in the last 3 months than you had in the previous several years. What have you learned about him?
Well, we've always had a very good relationship. We get along fine, but we have very different visions for what America should look like and what the role of the federal government should be.
You think it might take 18 holes between you and him to get this deal done?
I would hope not.
No? So that's not going to happen anytime soon?
Well, no, if the President invites me to play golf, it's the President. You don't say no to the President.
You saw what happened to Speaker Gingrich during a government shutdown. You can avoid that fate?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, thanks very much.